Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams, welcome back to Eyeshadow Palette Month, and today's video is going to be about 5 brands that I no longer am interested in trying any more eyeshadow palettes from, and some brands that I am interested in trying more from. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is going to be about some brands that I just have lost complete interest in when it comes to their eyeshadow palette ranges. And it's not because they're bad quality, it's not because I don't like these palettes anymore, but just because I feel that they're not necessarily bringing anything new to the table at the minute, or not necessarily bringing things new to the table that I personally enjoy, which is why I want to sort of lead the second half of the video into some brands that I'm currently really enjoying when it comes to eyeshadow palettes and that I feel have stunning formulas. So let's get into it. If you're unfamiliar with the channel, then hi, my name is Mocca. I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup, which tends to be a little bit differently than most people in the online beauty sphere. I've been reviewing makeup for more than a decade. I love eyeshadow palettes, essence, and couture, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if you're here for that, I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. So I think the 5 brands I want to chat to you about as brands I'm no longer interested in when it comes to buying eyeshadow palettes from don't necessarily come as a surprise to anyone if you're familiar with my content. That being said, some of these may come across just a little bit snarky, but still, if you love buying from these brands, that by no means be offended, because you do you. Makeup is incredibly subjective, and these are just my thoughts on why I don't necessarily go for these brands anymore. First things first brand on the list, Urban Decay. I have a vast Urban Decay eyeshadow palette collection. For years, my favorite 2 palettes on the planet were the Urban Decay Naked 2 and the Urban Decay Naked 3. I haven't bought a single eyeshadow palette from them in, I think, 2 years now, and nothing they have released has really sparked my interest and has felt like something I should buy. And the reason for that is because I just feel that Urban Decay is currently not really the go-to brand. In fact, the brand seems to be struggling a little bit as well. They have been taken off of the EU market. So that's definitely happened there. So it's going to also be a bit more difficult for me to find them again. There are a few online retailers I think I can still buy them from, but there isn't a single Urban Decay counter anymore anywhere where I live. They've been taken out of Sephora in like France and Germany as well, so the brand is just no longer around either, which also means I'm a little less in tune with what the brand has to offer. That being said, a couple of their recent releases, there were some eyeliners, and their Space Cowboy eyeshadow is really making the rounds on TikTok. So people seem to be falling back in love with some of the things that Urban Decay as a line has to offer. However, Urban Decay was one of those brands that 10 years ago, when I got first into makeup, it was one of the most exciting brands that was around. A lot of brands were doing incredibly neutral things, and Urban Decay was like the colorful brand. They had these really stunning purples and greens, and I still have my original like shadow box, which was a palette that they had in their line for years. And for years, it was my go-to for like certain blues and purples and greens that were in there. And I haven't decluttered, I think, save for one palette, because I really wasn't getting the use out of that one. But save for like one palette, I never decluttered any of my Urban Decay palettes. However, in my last declutter earlier this year, I decided to cut, save for one eyeshadow palette, all of my Urban Decay palettes out of my collection. I didn't get rid of them because they just are a part of my makeup journey too much. And for years, Urban Decay was my go-to brand for eyeshadow because it's buildable, because it is a good formula. Yes, the shimmers are a bit sparkly, and a lot of people were saying how Urban Decay was sort of like stuck in like what was good in like 2012, around the time they released their Naked palettes. And those were like the hype of the online beauty community, and that they've never really evolved beyond that. So I'm hoping to see the brand do some nice things again in the future. However, at the minute, I'm just really not feeling a lot of the things that are in the Urban Decay line. Sure, I'll buy a couple of things here and there again from the brand at some point, but at the minute, I don't see myself expanding on my Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes at all. I have the ones I like. I can go back to them if I'd like to. Some of them are really old at the point, so I don't really feel like using them anymore. However, I did reorganize my Naked 2 and Naked 3 into like my ultimate cool toned color story. I can link you to that video down below where I put it together. And those are some of the oldest eyeshadows in my makeup collection. I think I bought... When did I buy the Naked 2? It must have been like 2010 or 2011. Like that eyeshadow is like 12 years old. I just know. But it's still good. I can still use it. It's not gone moldy. It doesn't look funky. It still swatches great. Powders can stay good for a very, very long time if you take care of them and you use clean fingers and brushes whenever you use the palette. It can last you a very, very long time, much longer than what the container on the back says. I've mentioned that a lot of times before. So yeah, I was just hoping to get more use out of those palettes if I just kept the shades from those two palettes that I like the most. So that's what I ended up doing, and it's definitely been a great way to get more use out of some of these older eyeshadows. I do have backups for those as well. So I still have a brand new Naked 2 and Naked 3 that I purchased recently, so that if these do expire, I still have that and I still have the complete palette, and that's why I didn't mind pulling them apart and creating a new color story. So yeah, Urban Decay is the first brand I had to mention here because at the minute, also because it is so difficult now to get because they're no longer sold here, I just don't think I'm gonna buy from them anytime soon if they do release a new eyeshadow palette. Second brand here on the list is Charlotte Tilbury. I've tried some Charlotte Tilbury quads in the past. I've tried some of the single cream eyeshadows. I bought some of the Pop Shot single eyeshadows that were limited edition for Christmas last year. Let's just say Charlotte Tilbury is not the brand I think of when it comes to eyeshadow. I think Charlotte Tilbury as a brand is really good in like their liquid cheek products. Those Beauty Light ones I think are beautiful. I love the cream bronzer that she's come out with. I love the Hollywood Film Star Bronze and Glow. That's the thing I like. There are a couple of stunning foundations in the line as well. The powder is really good. So Charlotte Tilbury for me is much more of a complexion brand. Oh, the lipsticks are good as well. But like the eyeshadow, I just don't feel that that's what the brand focuses on. And therefore I feel it's not their like core business. It's not what people go for when you go for eyeshadow, like for a Charlotte Tilbury brand. You just don't really go for the eyeshadows. Now, apparently those larger palettes are really stunning as well. I've never tried those because they are just a bit pricey, and half the shades usually don't appeal to me. And that's been one of the reasons why I think I will no longer buy from Charlotte Tilbury. The Rebel Eyes or Green Light Squad is one that kind of I still kind of like the look of. However, I've tried so many eye products from Charlotte Tilbury and I've always just felt a little bit let down that for the price point and what you get, I think there is just better eyeshadow at that price point around. You can get an entire, like you can nearly get like a 15 pan from Natasha Denona for the same price point as a Charlotte Tilbury quad. Very often the ones I've tried, I gotten as a freebie, as a gift with purchase when I purchase things in Black Friday. So with Charlotte Tilbury, if you do want to try the eyeshadow, wait for a sale, wait for Black Friday, because they usually have coupons that stack on top of your order. And if you get a bit more, you get an even bigger discount. So Charlotte Tilbury can be worth it that way. And you can definitely get some extra products and things like that. However, with Charlotte Tilbury, I just feel, especially the quads, are just so expensive for what you get. And for years, Charlotte Tilbury quads were very much hated on in the online beauty community. But I definitely think that because of TikTok, it's really gotten a little bit like a new lease of life. And people have been hyping up some of the quads as well. It's like, oh, you can do this wash of color with like a shimmer over the lid, because that's pretty much how the Charlotte Tilbury quads work, is that you have a couple of shades that you can use, like the top two make like your day look, and then if you pull in the third one, you get the more glam look. And then if you want to add sparkle, you can use the sparkly shade that's in the bottom left hand corner. That's sort of how it works. But I now have K-Beauty eyeshadow that is a third of the price of a Charlotte Tilbury quad that does that for me. So I know I can find that sort of look at far more affordable price points that I actually like better than the Charlotte Tilbury quads have to offer. So I just feel there are alternatives that I just feel I don't need to spend this money. Sure, with Charlotte Tilbury, you get the really pretty rose gold packaging. If that's something you want to go for, then it can still be worth the splurge. But I personally no longer need to buy any eyeshadow palettes from this brand. Too Faced. In my new makeup releases videos, I always keep mentioning, oh yeah, Too Faced is like duping themselves. By now, they just really start to just reiterate whatever it is they've done in other palettes in the past, and everything starts to look like a recycled version of it. I personally have never, like, I've liked Too Faced eyeshadow for sure, but I wasn't the kind of Too Faced girly who was like, oh, I really love this, and oh, the scent, and oh, this, and oh, that. In fact, that was always one of the reasons why I didn't love Too Faced eyeshadow, was because it had that scent. I can be pretty sensitive to scents. I do my makeup early in the morning. For years, I got up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to get to work, and you just don't need cocoa, vanilla, sweet peach scents that early in the morning. It just doesn't work, and it just gave me a headache straight away. After like having the palettes for a while, the scent got less strong, and that's when I started to like and appreciate my Too Faced palettes a lot more. However, since then, again, I can link it in the description box down below, I've reorganized a couple of my Too Faced palettes and just kept the shades I liked from each one. I've decluttered a few of the palettes. The one that I'm definitely never ever going to get rid of is the white chocolate. That's the only Too Faced palette I still have intact. The other ones I've either gotten rid of, or I've pulled the shades that I like and I've rearranged it, and that's the way I'm getting the use out of my Too Faced palette now. So Too Faced, I think, had their moment, but at the minute, I just don't really, it's a bit like with Urban Decay. Ever since they were taken over by a bigger conglomerate, the launches just haven't been as exciting, and they just seem to be doing and redoing a lot of what they've already done in the past. It's like you have one big hit and now you're trying to recreate that success with like the same thing over and over, which I don't love. Now this brand may come a little bit as a surprise to people, but Juvia's Place. Juvia's Place was everywhere a couple of years ago, and I definitely hopped on the Juvia's Place bandwagon. I think there was a point in time where I owned all Juvia's Place palettes that were around. And I like the quality a lot of the older palettes that I still have in my collection. They are still one of my go-to brands for some of my more warm tone picks, some of my more colorful picks as well. But then there was definitely a change in the brand, in the quality, and then they started doing these larger palettes, and I tried a few of them, but then I just started to notice like this brand is just no longer for me. This is just no longer going with what I like to do in terms of makeup. Especially a couple of years ago, I started to revert back to more neutral color stories again, and these like overly saturated shadows that everybody was raving about and are still raving about just no longer really brought anything new to the table for me. I just feel that even a shadow is very impactful right off the first time you apply it. You stick your brush in and you get intensity, that these shadows can just be a little bit difficult to work with. And I also feel that it can not blend very well with your undertone sometimes. So this may sound a little bit weird, but I prefer a more buildable formula, not just because it's easier to work with, but because I feel I get more variety out of a single shade than when it's like boom, kapow, pigment in one go, and then you need to try and see if you can blend it. And I just feel that more buildable shadows, you can use them as one and dones, you can sort of like spread them out and it just works with your skin tone really beautifully. And I just feel that with these very pigmented shadows that Juvia's Place is also known for, it takes so many more shades to get an eyeshadow look that works, rather than when you have a more buildable formula, you could wear maybe just 2 or 3 shadows and it looks like you've done a lot, while you've actually not done a lot. That's why I prefer more buildable formulas, and that's why I've sort of gotten off of the Juvia's Place train. I haven't purchased from them, I think, again, in like 2 or 3 years. And everything they've come out with some really beautiful looking products, but nothing has been able to really stick in my brain and making me go like, oh, I need to try this thing from Juvia's Place. Even though they've really expanded on the range and they've come out with some beautiful, especially like cheek products and like foundations, and they do some really, really good products. But another thing that's holding me back is because they only have a US-based website, so it's always going to take some custom and handling fees to get it here. And with Juvia's Place, I've just tried enough. I feel that I know, okay, I have what I like from the brand, and I don't need to expand on it, if that makes sense. And this is a brand that I've actually added to this list quite recently, and this is the final brand I don't see myself purchasing eyeshadow palettes from anymore, and it's ABH. So Anastasia Beverly Hills, of course, the modern renaissance hype, I definitely fell for it. At a point in time, I pretty much had all of the ABH palettes that were around, like the longer rectangular ones. Didn't love the quality of the Norvina brand line. I tried 1 or 2 of those. Didn't love it. So of course ABH at a certain point in time just started to do a little bit too much. There were too many releases, nobody could keep up anymore. And I definitely feel like they've regained their sort of branding at the minute. With the Nouveau and the Cosmic and the Rose Metals. I think they're very popular palettes for a good reason. I did buy the Nouveau, but I tried that, and now I feel like the other 2 palettes that came after it feel like renditions of the Nouveau. And even though there are stunning shades in there, I think a lot of people are gonna love these. They're just also pretty warm toned, and I think it's just all going to look a little samey on my complexion. And ABH is another one of those brands where I just feel like, yeah, I have a very nostalgic memory with a lot of the products that I've tried from them in the past. I had a bunch of their liquid lipsticks. I've tried some of their blushes and bronzers, foundation as well. But at the minute, like, I've reorganized, again, link in the description box down below. I've reorganized 6 of my ABH palettes into 2 to keep the shades I like from them, but I could pretty much declutter everything else. There is just a handful of ABH palettes that were really, really successful for me, and therefore I just feel I don't necessarily need to go into this brand yet again and buying these new palettes that they have. In both the Rose Metals and the Cosmic, there's only like 1 or 2 shades that really make the palette for me, and I just need more. Especially at this point in time, I have a vast eyeshadow palette collection, and because I've reorganized some of my older palettes, I know what I like, I know what I have, and that's what I want to stick to. I don't necessarily want to chase down the new, just because this brand is doing something new. I don't necessarily need everything from these brands yet again. That being said, I think that's a nice segue into our sort of brands that I am very much interested in. And the first brand I need to mention here is Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the brand that's currently my Pokemon gotta catch 'em all kind of brand, where I'm like, I don't have that one yet, and I don't have that. Do I need to add? Do I? That new Fighter palette, I know I'm going to buy it. Like, it's on the wish list when it comes to Europe because it's stocked on Monolith. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it for sure. I have the Rogue, I have the Druid, and I love them both. Really stunning quality. They have a shimmer to matte ratio that very much floats my boat. because you get some more shimmers than you do mattes, and the mattes and the shimmers really work together quite nicely as well. So I really appreciate the 9 pans. I believe that now they've changed some of the packaging and everything is magnetic as well, which I always love. The older ones I have don't do that yet. So I'm sort of like, if I also buy the fighter, maybe I should buy the bard and the sorcerer at some point as well. Like that's in my brain. Whereas I'm like, the bard and the sorcerer I passed up on because they're not my preference in terms of color stories. But it's like, you know, I would love to have all of the things from this brand. And I've definitely gone through phases like that with Urban Decay, ABH, Too Faced. Like at a certain point in time, I had like all the palettes, and I'm trying really hard to not go back to that mentality of I need to get all of them. I should just focus on having the color stories that I know work for me, because all I'll do in a couple of years' time, if I do buy those warmer toned color stories, is rearrange them and keep just the 2 shades that actually work for me from the palette, which is what I've done with ABH, Too Faced, and Urban Decay. So I definitely don't need everything from this brand. So I'm talking myself out of that. But yeah, that new Fighter palette, I looked at that, gave it one glance, looked at the swatches, was like, yup, that is going to be a purchase I will be making. So Fantasy Cosmetica is very much on point. They do some really cool color stories. That Rogue palette, Blue, Green, Purple Heaven, I loved it. I really like the looks. Very impactful shimmers. Everything has a bit of a shift / duochrome, multi-chrome kind of vibe, but still very workable and still perfect for every day, but more intense than your usual very buildable shadow. So if you like very impactful eyeshadow, then I definitely think checking out Fantasy Cosmetica is a great one. I need to mention Lisa Eldridge here. I still have a few palettes. They're still out of stock at the minute, but I've heard that the Sorcery palette should be coming back in August, but that's all I've heard, and I don't have a release date for it as of yet. Maybe by now it's out, I don't know. I'm filming this video a little bit in advance. But yeah, that Sorcery palette is still very much on the wish list, and also Myth. But the one I bought is Vega, and in terms of good quality eyeshadow, that's where it's at. That quality that I like of buildable shadows with some shimmers that have some texture and that can really sort of transform looks. And even though it's just a 6-pan, you can do so much with it. The Lisa Eldridge eyeshadow palette I've tried in Vega hits all the marks. Like, it just ticks all the boxes for me. Yes, there are a couple of things that I would want to do differently because I feel there are too many grays in the palette. I would have liked a more intense taupe instead of the gray. Then it would have been perfect, but that's the only thing I would change. The mattes have a stunning, very blendable, yet buildable formula. The shimmers are really stunning. You get some different formulas in this one as well. You can make things look super sparkly and glam, but you can also tone things down and make it look perfect for the daytime. So in terms of eyeshadow that I can just see myself getting a lot of use out of, Lisa Eldridge definitely hits the sweet spot. Sorcery is an all shimmer palette though, so I'm not sure I would get the same sort of level of versatility as I do the Vega, which is why I actually picked up the Vega first, and I was like, I'll try the formula, and if I love it, I'll buy the other ones, and I'm pretty sure that there are going to be other ones in the future as well, but this is a brand I'm definitely eyeing up on when it comes to, you know, trying more of their eyeshadow palettes, because I do love them. These are also removable pans. You can buy them as singles, so if you buy one palette, and you have a couple of the singles that you could like mix and match them, or if you have a couple of palettes, and you can take them with you for travel and all that. So Lisa Eldridge is definitely one I love. The brand that has taken the place for me in terms of what Urban Decay, ABH, and Too Faced used to offer for me is Viseart. Viseart is my new sort of like medium range to high-end sort of brand that does the neutral color stories I love. They do a lot of different things. They also have removable pans. Their packaging is incredibly versatile and travel friendly. And you can then mix and match different shades within the palettes if you have a couple of them. I have a couple of the larger panned ones, so the Violette Étendue and the Cashmere are two of my favorites. I love the Petite Pros. They're very, very small. And even the Color Stories that I bought that was like, is this a bit too warm toned? I'm not sure I'm gonna love it. They ended up working for me really, really well, and I'm very chuffed with those. So I also have a bunch of the Petit Four, which are their 4 pans, which are really good companion palettes to the Violette Étendue and the Cashmere, because they can add some bright pops of color or some like more cool tones if that's what you want. So I love how you can mix and match these, and their formula is just stunning. It's great, it's buildable. The shimmers are impactful, but they're not this high shine metallic sort of glittery mess that gets all over your cheeks. So Viseart is like my new standard go-to brand for like my baseline of eyeshadow palettes. They have definitely taken the top spot from a brand like Urban Decay for me. Maybe it's also because I'm getting a little bit older. I'm in my late 30s, and you know, my lids aren't smooth and crepe free anymore either. And I just know that Viseart as a brand is loved by a lot of people with more mature lids anyways, because their shimmer formula is just so good that it doesn't go everywhere. And that's one of the things I really appreciate. If you want really highly impactful metallic shimmers, Viseart is not going to be the brand for you, but I just really enjoy their mattes, their more satin formula. And then if you have something like the Fantasy Cosmetica, or maybe like a single from a K-beauty brand, you can very easily add the sparkle on top if you so wish to. But there's a couple more like indie makeup-ish brands that I have just been really enjoying. I'm really currently raving about Gloss Gods. Their new neutral remix palette is now currently one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection, which is why it's part of the giveaway. So if you haven't entered yet, make sure, I'll make sure to link you to a video down below where you can find all the information on how you can enter. But I'm giving away that palette because it's just that good. And I have another one of their palettes currently on my wish list. It's a brand where I don't feel I need everything, because not everything they do necessarily sparks my interest, but they did this really lovely, cool toned, smoky eye palette for Christmas limited edition last year that I picked up, and I loved it. It's the Smoke and Mirrors. I have their Old Shimmer Dancing in the Sky palette, and it's also really lovely. So I have just fallen in love with Gloss Gods because they do neutral palettes, but with a twist, because there's always like some sort of multi-chrome or duochrome or something more sparkly, a bit like the Lisa Eldridge, where I feel that Lisa Eldridge is the more sophisticated version. It's like definitely more high-end and luxury, but Gloss Gods is the impactful, still easy to blend and work with, but also still perfect for if you want neutrals, but with a twist. Gloss Gods has been my go-to brand, and I really enjoy them for this shimmer formula. And like Fantasy Cosmetica, it's a brand that tends to favor putting shimmers in palettes over mattes, which is what I like. And last but not least, we need to talk about Glamshop, which is actually what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I'm wearing the Zimna Mocca because we all know. Glamshop is a brand that is much more known, though, I think, for their singles than their palettes. I also have a bunch of their singles, which are really lovely, and when they discontinue their palettes, a lot of the singles actually end up being sold still. But they do have a policy where their palettes is sort of like, snatch them up right now and then they're gone. They are a more affordable brand. They are Polish, so if you're in the EU, same thing for Gloss Gods, by the way, they're an EU-based indie brand, they're from Sweden. So if you're in the European Union, they are a little bit more affordable to buy than when you're in the US. And I just feel like within the Glamshop line, I have found a lot of the things that ColourPop does. But I prefer the Glamshop formula, and it's less expensive for me to buy. So I've been really loving Glamshop. Again, great, really impactful shimmer formulas. They have their turbo shadows, I think they're called. Super stunning. They do multi-chromes as well. So with this brand, you could go either for the palettes or build your own, especially if they have a sale on. Sometimes their eyeshadows are as cheap as €1.50, which is amazing. But yeah, their eyeshadow palettes are really good too. I have one of their larger ones, the Cashmere, and then a bunch of their 9 pans. Most of the ones I have, sadly, have already been discontinued because they only bring out their palettes in very limited edition sort of like releases, but they also repeat themselves. So then, you know, the Cashmere is now discontinued. It's no longer on their website, but they've just released their summer collection with these 70s palettes, and I feel that the cool tone neutral option from those 3 palettes looks very similar to something the Cashmere would do, or the Coco Sanka, which is also no longer around. But I love this brand. It's definitely a brand I recommend you look into if you are in the EU and you're looking for good mattes and also some really good, stunning, very impactful shimmers. Then Glamshop is a great affordable option. Their palettes, their 9 pans are around the like 20-21 euro mark, which is some of the most affordable things I'm talking about here today. So loving me some Glamshop, and I'm very glad I picked up some palettes again earlier this year. So that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about in today's video. 5 brands that I don't think I'm going to be buying another eyeshadow palette from anytime soon, and 5 brands that I'm super excited for that have definitely taken the place of these other 5 eyeshadow palette brands that I used to love and that I still love. I still love the palettes I have by these brands, but I don't necessarily need their new things. So thank you so very much for joining me today. Let me know in a comment down below what are some brands you are no longer loving or that you are very much in love with. I would love to know, because very often if you answer these questions, I get lots of ideas for new makeup purchases or just doing videos with. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. I've got more content coming your way in eyeshadow palette month, so I hope you're here for it. And then I hope you would like to stay tuned for more. Have a great day, everybody, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!